Ladies and gentlemen, we have a question to go through for anybody who's actually paying attention to the VODs, or for everyone who is currently present. Up, 42 should do. He's completely ignoring the roots. That is actually really funny. Okay. I'm just going to heal up a little bit more then. So here's the problem. I can actually point to the specific moment which I realized we have a problem here. And that is when we were doing the third boss of Shattered Halls, which is a guy whose major mechanic has to do with how he swaps in between his two heads. It's the ogre. It's the two-headed ogre boss. Thing is, we were time walking and doing it at level, and we still, under those provisos, killed him so fast we didn't even see his mechanics. At all. And, well, we review dungeons at level. We review the game in its current state. That has always been the policy. It's a policy I agree with. You start to see the problem here. We even have precedents for this when we reviewed this. When we reviewed Crystal Tower over in FF14, we didn't review it as it once was when you actually had to engage in the mechanics. We reviewed it as it is when you go back through it. And that's precedence right there. But here's the problem. I was doing some tech tests last night. That's one of the reasons I was up till 3. And we've been doing tech tests unintentionally this entire time. And pretty much every single dungeon in the game, with only a handful of very minute exceptions, is going to run into that problem. We're just going to push through encounters. We have been pushing through encounters while completely ignoring their mechanics. Nothing showcased that better than last night, or yesterday, excuse me, when we did, or excuse me, 2 days ago. God, it's been a minute. When we did Hadronox. So, the ideal, in my opinion, would be being able to, I'm in Utgard Keep. The ideal would be the ability to somehow actually be able to do the dungeons at level with Heroic. There are multiple problems with that, however. And, well, there's a caveat there, too. So here's the thing. We actually have precedents for us overcoming the game's problems in order to enjoy the game. We actually have quite a bit of precedence on that. So us having to twist around to get to the game content proper is not like the end of the world. But Von Falkenstein making me bow in the middle of speech, that is absolutely the end of the world. I feel like the necessary steps that would be required in order to experience the dungeons at Heroic at level is beyond PFR, right? It violates PFR. Because we would have to have an entire group of people, a regular prefab, set up, not just for like Heroics, but for Heroics per expansion. That's 30 for Wrath, 35 for Cataclysm and Pandaria, 40 for Warlords, 45 for Legion, 50 for BFA, and 60 for Shadowlands. Now, interestingly, you'll notice I stopped there before we hit Dragonflight. That's because the moment we hit Dragonflight, we're actually fine. I have done multiple tech tests on how to make Dragonflight work, and Dragonflight is, as we just described, fine. There are no issues, because follower dungeons are a perfectly reasonable and no PFR necessary way to experience dungeons and still see content and still see them. It's still not what I would prefer, because it's all normal dungeons instead of heroics, but it is at least a way to review the dungeons. I have done almost every dungeon, well, I have done every dungeon in this game at level, with one exception, and I have done almost every raid in this game at level. But that doesn't matter, because I'm not reviewing my memories. You know what I mean? That's not what we're here to review, and it is legitimately unfair to give WoW that extra advantage of, I'm going to just slather all sorts of nonsense over it in order to give it that extra advantage in terms of reviewing. Now, I mean, no offense by this statement, but a thought just kind of spurred in my mind last night. That's one of the reasons I had trouble getting to sleep, was because I realized last night that, as is, FF14 might actually review better than WoW on the gameplay side of things. And no offense, that's nonsense. So I spent a while trying to actually figure out how to kind of make this work, for lack of a better way to do it, because it has to be something that's reasonable for a player to do. Even a new player. If they might need a guide, we have a term for that. It's called walkthroughitis. But there needs to be something that's reasonable for a new player to do. It needs to be something that doesn't violate PFR, and it needs to be something that actually experiences the dungeons as intended. Now, I already have a bit of a backup option here. It's not something I'm super happy to engage in. But if all else fails, what we're going to do is not review the dungeons gameplay-wise. At all. Until we get to Dragonflight, obviously, at which point the follower dungeon system just neatly solves all of these problems. Yeah, no, Huthor is quite correct. The problem, and if I can be honest, my tone probably does not convey how angry I am about all this. Because there is a tremendous amount of excellent content in this game that Blizzard is effectively just throwing out the window because they don't care. Now, in the interest of honesty here, for just a few seconds, I can tell the moment Mr. Red started typing there because my health just started going away. In the interest of honesty, I've lost my train of thought. What was I saying? In the interest of honesty, WoW has been getting a lot better about its older content. Recently, very recently, like this year recently. Yeah, I'm just going to disagree with that, Primarch. I'm sorry. Like, I don't want to demonstrate this, but the idea of FF14 reviewing better on the gameplay axis than WoW, at that point, there's something fundamentally wrong somewhere, you know? Anyways. Which I suppose it is. Yeah, but they're not going to Europe. How many mechanics have we engaged in the dungeons we've done so far? I can name 3. And I actually thought about it last night. One of them was forced. That was the vehicle section on Oculus. So, as you may or may not have noticed, what we're doing is something of a compromise. This is actually something that occurred to me. Because, well, we kind of did this by accident a few days ago, if you remember. There are a couple of provisos, but I think that we're at the point where we're still within the range of PFR. Oh my god, that hurts. You'll notice we're actually having to try on trash. It's kind of nice, actually. The problem here is that we might not be able to do the bosses. If you type !PFR, you'll get a video link to explain it in full, but what it stands for in simplicity is possible, feasible, and reasonable. So one way to let's talk this out. Let's talk about the options that have been eliminated, okay? So first of all, doing a dungeon at level with a full 5 group, not feasible. We just run over content, and at that point, we're not even experiencing it. There's no point in even engaging with the content at that point. Like, really, there is no reason to engage with the dungeons if we're just going to run over them before they go away. I am going to be honest, this is kind of on me. I really had no idea how much time walking was not properly set up for this kind of crap. Like, that's why Shattered Halls was the first time that there was just a, huh? Kind of a moment for me. Because we were actually going through several dungeons and several bosses and just completely disengaging with their mechanics. Like, if you remember, I started talking about on the Grand Warlock. I was like, all right, so this guy, he's going to drop some crap on the ground. He never did it. He never did a single Void Zone. He did do the Whirlwind, but that's it. Okay, I'm going to pause here to acknowledge donations. So we had one from Vaughn Falkenstein. So Wrath of Fire 4. Hang on, Bledgeable. Give me a sec. Phantom Brigade. Phoenix, Point, Tiny Hippo, 270. Black, Mesa. Ratchet and Clank 1 is already funded, Tiny Hippo. Does anyone know what Ratchet and Clank 2's subtitle is? Because I need to know the subtitle. Going Commando, thank you. Going Commando. Or Locked and Loaded? Does anyone know what Ratchet and Clank 3 is called? I need names, because it's going to help later. Because I've got them all listed by names. Okay, so up your arsenal. Thank you. No, it is a huge flaw in the game. It is such a gargantuan flaw in the game that I'm honestly having trouble wrapping my mind around it. It is that huge of a problem. This is pretty much the WoW equivalent of the fact that you can't co-op in FF14. Something I gave 3 negatives per expansion for, if you remember. It's funny, because we already had something like that, which is the fact that you cannot experience raids at all. So, this is our second. Oh shoot. Yeah, no, this is probably a negatives per dungeon kind of territory right here. This is legitimately terrible. Yeah, at an absolutely bare minimum, this would have to be negatives per expansion. Quite possibly negatives per dungeon. That's a little bit debatable. We're kind of in new ground here. Okay, so, Mr. Red, what I would like for you to do is I would like for you to DPS, okay? And treat this seriously, right? So just go ahead and do it as if we were 5 people. Okay, no offense to Thor. It is a flaw. It is a huge, giant, gaping, terrible, awful, no good, really bad flaw. Okay? I'm sorry. You have to understand this. Okay, look at this from the perspective of a review for just a second, all right? If we were to review every dungeon in the game with time walking, then the amount of gameplay positive we would give to every dungeon in the game up to Dragonflight is 0. Really think about that for a second. Okay. So let's see how this goes. So this guy does have one basic mechanic. Just the one. And WoW so thoroughly abandoning its old content has always been a problem. Okay, so I need Mr. Red. This is his mechanic. He needs to break me out of the tomb. Hopefully he will be good enough on the DPS to do so. Oh, okay, that hurt. That hurt. All right, let's get all this stuff on me. I mean, the goal is and always will be to review dungeons as they are, not as they should be. And that's just where we're at with that. Oh, this sucks. Okay. I'll pop these. The other mechanic is his ads self-res every few seconds, every 20 seconds, excuse me, after they die. Which is what's killing me. Yep, I'm dead. See, this is the interesting thing. So, this is not the first time I've walked into this dungeon. That's why I'm using this exact dungeon to review. So, fascinatingly enough, 2 people would have a very serious time killing this boss. It is arguably too hard with 2 people. And therein lies the problem. It's the same problem I just showcased with the heroic dungeons, because I cannot solo heroic dungeon at level. Which is arguably good, but for the purposes of the review is very bad. Uthor, I love you. You're not answering anything that I wanted your opinion on. No offense. Like, yes, you're telling me that water is wet, and yes, I do understand that water is wet. Part of the problem here, Blade Taval, is I want you to do me a favor. Think about FF14 for just a second. Think about gameplay positives that FF14 got, okay? Now imagine for just a second that all of the dungeon positives and raid positives went away. What do you think FF14's score would be? In fact, I keep numbers on these sort of things. So just off the top, let's just look here. Could someone do me a favor and check the website and tell me what FF14's gameplay score is? The whole thing. $260. Okay. So that means FF14's final gameplay score would be negative 33 if I removed all the dungeons from it. I mean, honestly, it's not like Dragonflight's dungeons are particularly hard, but at the very least, and I can prove this because I've done tech tests on that, you do at least engage in the mechanics of the bosses, like we just did with Talinar or Telagath or whatever. Keleseth here. Yeah, no, we will be able to review, like, it's so funny. This is one of the reasons why this is such a weird point for me, because we will be able to review both Dragonflight and War Within dungeons just fine. I was worried about that, but no, I did a few tech tests and everything's fine on that front. We're good. Boom, done. So, let's look at our options. Let's look at our options for just a second. So, we have the ability to review the dungeons as is and just kind of accept that they're trash and figure out how many negatives we're going to give that. And essentially at that point, they just become part of the story axis and nothing else. I don't like this song. So that's option one, is figure out how many negatives we give for the fact that the dungeon content isn't, and then just review them as we kind of have been. Option two is we go ahead and delay or cancel the WoW review until they fix it. For lack of a better way to put that. Yeah, I don't need a video, look. I know these dungeons. The only dungeons I don't know by heart are Shadowlands, and that's because Shadowlands is the only expansion I didn't really engage with. Yeah, we also don't know if they're ever going to backport follower dungeons. That's kind of the caveat there. Here's the idea. So if we do option one, what we will do is we will figure out how many negatives we give on what ratio. And we will label those clearly, as I always do, so that if they ever go back and fix that, then I can go ahead and remove those negatives. And if they ever fix that, we could do like a WoW dungeon review straight, right? You know, go back with followers, feel how they, because that's what it would be. It would be fixing it with followers, and then go back and then like, you know, experience them as is. This, I guess there's actually option three too. So hang on, let's talk this out. So option one is we just kind of experience the content as it is, review it as it is. Huther. You're over here. I need you right here, okay? You're not making any points that matter here. No offense. You're over there arguing that this is a good or a bad thing, and that's not what matters. What matters is that this is a thing, and what do we do about it, okay? So, option 1, we go ahead and review the content as is. You know, we go ahead and we keep doing the face roll, because let's call it what it is. It has been the face roll, like we showed in Shattered Halls. Option 2 is we delay the entire run and just kind of push it into the shelf for a while. Option 3 is we go ahead and try to 3-man dungeons instead of 5-man them. I'm not sure if 3-man's possible. Bregman said she's available, although she's at the wrong dungeon. Yeah, let's go see if we can summon Bregman, Mr. Red. Yeah, where's there we go. Have a haste buff. 3 people is probably what I would say the barrier of PFR when it comes to this. Like, I was mostly hoping we could manage it with 2 people, because in my mind, if 2 people can experience a dungeon, you know, at level, you know, without any issues, then that's fine. Like, there's nothing. What I'm trying to say is that, especially going forward, I could then recommend, like, Bladesville. If Bladesville picks up WoW alongside, say, Rax, I could say, just go do the dungeons 2-man, right? That's an easy recommendation at that point. You'll be able to experience the dungeon that it is and get to see the content and blah, blah, blah. But we'll see what the 3-man option feels like. I know, Mr. Red. What really irritates me so much about this, other than the fact that Blizzard's attitude towards the old content has always pissed me off. Bregman, you didn't hit. Bregman said no. Why did you say no, Bregman? Why? Is the fact that Blizzard has already solved this problem. Like, literally has already solved the problem. All of the mechanics and gameplay concepts that need to exist in the game to make older content viable to experience as is already exist. I don't remember where the stone. Oh, I remember where the stone is. God, right. It's over here. If 3-man doesn't work, which we're about to do a tech test on, we'll kind of remove that from the table. There it is. Yeah, God, it's been a while since I've used this. If 3-man doesn't work, then what we'll probably do is we'll try the face roll option, which is going to involve a bit of an audit, too. Because it means all of the positives we've currently given, we can't. We'll have to pull those positives back. It also means we have to establish a standardized number of negatives for the fact that this system exists. Now, we already had a way to give those negatives for raids. So we could just expand the raid negatives we are already giving to the dungeons. I don't think the compromise works, though, because... And this is going to sound very strange, so just bear with me for a second. The compromise is being too nice to WoW. It is giving it too much credence, which it does not deserve. Does that make sense? I found myself running into this problem last night, too. I could think of actually a few other ways that you'll notice I am not suggesting, which could make this work out and could, like, smooth this over, or could make it so we can experience the content as it should be experienced. And the problem is I found myself realizing that if I am twisting myself in so many knots just to try and make the game actually do its own frickin' job for it, then I am being too biased to WoW, right? Just to say that as simply as possible. It'd be like if I got to FF6 and, I don't know, didn't give a negative for the stat penalty thing, right? Okay, so let's just run into this guy and see what happens. Gonna do this first, not so fast in a second. Break out the ice block. Pop a button. No, I know, right, Blade Duval? But it's, I mean, if anything, this is just me, right? We have to be as fair as possible. People argue that. People, oh, help, 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 help. People say I'm not fair when it comes to my reviews, and those people are liars. I do everything in my power to be as fair as possible with these reviews. Whoop, 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 whoop. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Okay, so I'm dead. Just kill him. Just kill him. Just kill him. Just kill him. Okay, we three-manned it with no healer. So that boss has two major mechanics. And you actually saw them. So here's the biggest problem with the three-man concept is how viable it is. However, this is at least on the table at all. And Lord knows, I actually have been three-manning my way through this. And yeah, that would be option one, Huthor, is what you're suggesting there. No, I saw it, Yura. And it's not like I can argue against that, right? Like, I can't argue against that. That's why I was more on board with the idea of a two-man party. Because I think it's reasonable to think that two people are going to walk into a dungeon to do the thing. And I do. I stand by that. This is a game. An extraordinary number of people played this game with one other person or two other people. And that's why I was hesitant to bring it up to three. You notice, even with three people, we barely managed that boss. Like, I died fighting that boss. Hey, you know what? Let's push a little bit further. Let's see how this feels if we have one tank, one DPS, and one healer. Now, the problem with that is immediate. Because, let's say I'm, I don't know, doing my Warlord's character. My Warlord's character is a mage. All of a sudden, I no longer have a tank. Now, for me, that wouldn't be an issue, to be quite frank. And the reason why is because that's how I tend to set up groups in general. Hey, what are you playing? Okay, I'll play something that complements you. So on any given character, it's reasonable for me for us to have the triad. Triad, right? The Holy Trinity or whatever the hell they call it. I actually don't remember what they call it. And what's funny is, obviously this is important for the purposes of the review, but there is another asterisk here. And I mentioned it earlier, I don't know if you even caught it. Because the other asterisk is, this changes how I recommend this game going forward to a lot of people. I know plenty of people who have never played this game. And we're sort of establishing a bit of precedence of how I recommend people play this game. So here's what I'm thinking. If we decide to do the three-man content thing, I'm feeling that we will still give dungeon negatives, and obviously the raid negatives are unchanged by any of this, right? Like, the raid negatives don't move. But we'll go ahead and continue doing dungeon negatives. Why? Because once again, it is upon... Oh, shoot. Okay. It's upon us to make up for the game, right? To fill in the holes the game is failing at. And that is still something that we have precedence for giving negatives to. No, it's okay. No, that was a nice moment, because I actually had a moment of, oh crap, we're going to die from a single extra pull. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. That's how that should feel. Ironically, Blizzard actually has multiple ways of fixing this, which they have not done. I mean, for example, and Yura mentioned this idly earlier, just making it so that dungeons scale to your party size, which is tech they already have in the game, would be kind of a nice thing. And if that sounds insane, oh god damn it, Mr. Red. And I'm gonna ban Mr. Red here really quick. If that sounds insane, then let me introduce you to a concept called delves. Actually, real quick story, just to detract from all this doom and gloom. Back in the day, back in Wrath, actually, Boomkins had a concept called Typhoon. Now, Typhoon had a glyph which removed the knockback on it. And I had an extremely simple rule. You get one. You get one screw-up of having Typhoon or Monsoon or whatever it's called without the glyph. If you do it a second time, you're out. I expect you to go to Orgrimmar right now, get that glyph, and get rid of that knockback immediately, or you are out of my raid team. Okay, so second boss. We actually have some choices on this guy. Who we kill first changes the second thing. So whoever we kill first then keeps fighting, and we just have to deal with them for the rest of the fight. I usually recommend killing the Necromancer first because there's not much you can do about him anyway, so it doesn't really change the fight. Whereas if you kill him first, then there's going to be a melee running around killing everyone else. But do me a favor, Mr. Red, and go healer. Let's see how this feels, shall we? Take your time. I don't know if you have your bar or your talent set up, so there's no rush here. I mean, I do understand that, Huthor, as weird as that sounds. Part of the reason I'm being as harsh as I am is because, once again, they have solved all of these problems. The hard part is done, right? Let me use a parallel example. FF14 does not have the ability to solve these problems. It cannot happen. They do not have the tech. They do not have the ability to work with it. The spaghetti code of FF14 is simply too much. WoW has already, past tense, solved these problems, right? And so it's kind of frustrating to me that they haven't then implemented the solution that already exists. Yes, I understand that would be a decent chunk of work. Yes, I understand they would have to have a team of people whose only job it is to go back and look at its older content. No, I don't care. They've got the money. They've got the time. Do it. It is not acceptable that a brand new player decides to make a troll, walks into Durotar and dies instantly to a mob that wasn't fixed properly. It is not acceptable that someone is really looking forward to Wrath since they've heard it talked up to all their friends, and they go through and they just face roll over everything without effort, even while at level, even while synced, and even while doing it in time walking. What are delves? Delves are great. I love delves. So delves are kind of micro dungeons. Lots of mechanics, decent design to them. Each time you walk into a delve, you get one, I think, random. I still don't actually understand 100% how this works. But you get one random version of that particular dungeon. So different content, different different bosses, different encounters, and different objectives. It scales to your party size. And you get an NPC who's with you, who you can set up to either DPS or heal to kind of fill holes in that. Now, they have been tinkering with delves to make sure it works correctly, but speaking from the current perspective, delves work really awesome. We've been doing every delve as either 2-man or 3-man, and it has been fantastic. I really love delves. Oh god, that would be awful, Huthor. Keeping in mind that I actually do recommend to some players that they do exactly that. That is the third recommendation fourth recommendation I tend to give for new players. In that order, by the way. I recommend that's the fourth thing to do. Although it kind of depends, because I understand what nuance is. Okay. Well, let's make an attempt on it. Like I said, go ahead and try and... I'll just put a skull up. Try and focus him down first. Make sure Braglin's here. Yep, okay. Let's do it. Let's see how this works. Gonna go and try and pull his aggro here, because he's gonna be pain if I don't. Hey, he actually did Weakened Soul. Holy crap. I haven't seen that in a long time. Oh, I have an interrupt now. Right, I just got one. Okay, I'm having to hit buttons. That's good. Unfortunately, Mr. Red is also just keeping me up here. Three-man dungeoning is awesome. What are you talking about here? Again, delves. Delves are awesome. They are an awesome feature that I cannot praise enough. They're also a good way to try and push hard content. This is something I've been wanting in WoW for literal years. In fact, Uthor and I had an argument about this during the WoW lore run like 6 or 7 years ago. Boom. Because, nice job, everyone. So, Mr. Red's Hamana went to half, and we were a little bit damaged, but we did manage that. We survived! Negative to gameplay. Because one of the things I argued for most strongly was how much I wanted raids to scale down to 3 players. And I did specifically put the floor at 3. A lot of other people in chat at the time were saying, no, it's a scale down to 1. I didn't quite agree with that. I felt like narrowing it down to wanting a tank, a DPS, and a healer was the only way you could actually make some of that content even function. And even then, there's going to be some issues, but most of the split-up stuff can work with 3 party members. I think there's only like 3 or 4 cracks for that one. And it's something I wanted for a very, very long time. And of course, I'm finally getting, because you can do delves at what is functionally mythic level. You can have a mythic 2-man or a mythic 3-man now. So hey, I guess Blizzard agree with me. Anyways. Sorry, I'm debating. So we've proven, sure, normal is normal, heroic is hard, and mythic is harder. There's actually even harder past mythic, but that's mythic plus. So normal, hard, harder, super harder, scaling up. That's the simple one. Your DPS is good. I mean, you're carrying the DPS because you're the only DPS in the group. That DPS is about right, though. You did twice what I did. And I was AoEing. But yeah, that was an interesting fight. A lot of these early Wrath fights are fairly simple. Both, Blade to Vol. Yeah, the follower system, once again, is already in the game. Is already working. You know what? You know what really solidified this for me? So for those of you who don't know, there is one raid boss in the entire game which can be done with followers. And while it is certainly easier, it's basically LFR difficulty. The fact of the matter is me and my friends, just last week actually, were able to go into that fight with story mode, is what they call it, which means followers, and do a raid boss with followers. And you know what? It was fun. It wasn't particularly hard, but it was fun. We did get to see the fight, and we did get to see all the mechanics of the fight. We got to actually engage with the freaking fight. With 3 people. So don't tell me the tech doesn't exist, because we are currently in a state now where it is possible. Now, that is a good question, Huthor, and that I don't know. Because they have access to that information, and I do not. All right. Here's what I'm feeling. Let us, for the most part, attempt this whole jury-rig 3-man thing, right? Tank, DPS, healer. That's going to put us a little bit at the mercy of who else is on at the time. But this is an MMO. We always knew that was going to happen, right? That's just how that is. And let's go ahead and give negatives for the fact that we have to 3-man groups in order to properly engage with the content in question. That means we're going to have to give some negatives to BC. And, yeah, I guess that's the end of that. I think that's the end of that sentence. So, at that point, we have one last question. Do we use the pre-existing precedent for raids when giving negatives to dungeons? Because that's what that's going to... Because we have to establish how many negatives we give what. Well, it's very simple, Yura. Si nici fotografita, vitiputukosha. I fabaci playata. Epa, yipita pasitipo. Or if you prefer. Abadikato, umpo tompita. Dashi pompito. No, I do agree with you, Mr. Ed. That's why this is pissing me up so much. What is the standard? Well, the standard is to be dynamic about it and to give negatives based on how much content is good, in addition to how much content exists. So there's the two metrics. So, in other words, one negative is the floor, right? Because the content exists, period. But then if there's particularly good content that we're missing out on, like, say, Black Temple or Sunwell or Karazhan, then we give additional negatives for the fact that that is particularly good content that we're missing out on. Karazhan is really kind of the key cornerstone of this, you know? Because Karazhan is a great raid, even today, and does some really cool, awesome, interesting stuff that you will never experience. It is abandoned content. It is functionally impossible to enjoy Karazhan. It is possible. Here, let's go ahead and start heading out. It is possible to experience Karazhan as intended. It takes so many hoop jumps. Oh, speaking of which, did you know you can't experience cap past like 60-something? I ran into that one last night. Why? I have no idea. It's not new, though. Apparently, in Dragonflight, you couldn't experience cap past, like, 50 or something. Now, that is a good question, Maverick. So that's something else that's been mentioned several times. I guess we could just beat the dungeon while we're... Let's just go and beat the dungeon. We're doing this soon anyways. So whatever. So the precept there... The conceit there is and always has been the idea of reviewing the content, assuming that someday it becomes accessible. It's in short, it's kind of saving me some time when it comes to future reviews. However, that is built on a conceit, and it has actually been argued several times, in fact, by viewers and myself and my friends, that those positives shouldn't currently exist. And honestly, I have a hard time arguing against that. What that would mean is we would go ahead and get rid of all of the positives for every raid on the gameplay axis and go ahead and maintain the negatives. So Molten Core would only be -1 to gameplay. Wouldn't that be great? Would BC become better if we just ejected dungeons? That's a good question, actually. It's not like the overworld of BC was particularly good, but I don't know. I haven't stared at the document yet to see how that would math out yet. But yeah, as much as it feels extremely weird to essentially ignore raids from a gameplay perspective, I don't have a counter argument there. You know, there is no counter argument to be given. You cannot experience raids from a gameplay perspective anymore. They're gone. Any of them, like literally any of them. Dragonflight, which just came out. Can't do it. Yeah, no. I've been thinking on that for about a week now, and I think I'm going to go ahead and just pull the trigger on that. That means I'm going to have to adjust BC's score here. Frickin' wow. Well, the problem is there is no doing raids with a control group. It's not really possible. I mean, it is possible, but it's not reasonable. Now, Huthor brings up an interesting point, actually. For once! Sorry. I got a joke, because I'm really, like, I'm not conveying it. You could tell because I'm kind of trying to joke about this. But this is why I was up till 3 last night, because this just absolutely kicked me across the teeth last night. This is not great. I really, honestly, my first instinct was just to put the game down and be like, yeah, I'm good. We'll do other stuff. Let's just move on. That was my very first instinct, because it was just, ugh. And yeah, I had this whole thing set up, and I had no idea. This is the part that's my fault, because I had no idea that time walking was such a face roll. If I had known that, I could have adapted for this before we even started the review. The concept this whole time has been that at least if we time walk the dungeons, which is still already an asterisk to even experience the content, then that would at least be something that's acceptable in order to allow for perceiving the content. Anyway, so this guy, he's going to do some area denial stuff, and then he's going to do that. That's a new graphic. That's interesting. Yeah, no, it kind of is Blade Duel. It really is. If I'd known. So he does Staggering Roar. That's a interrupt silence thing that should only really be affecting Mr. Red. I'll go ahead and pop my first cooldown here.
Shockwave.
Nothing much to his first phase here. This is your tutorial dungeon. Quite literally. This is for people who had just gotten into Wrath, because a lot of people just pretty much went straight into Wrath from BC. And we're like, huh? And so there's not much complexity to these. We're going to go ahead and scooch behind these pillars. That's good. That's actually good to hear, Blade Duel. I wasn't going to ask you yet, because Wrath is only one step up. I was going to ask you in like 2 expansions. So he's going to do that AoE thing. That's Dreadful Roar. Boop. And then we're going to pull him over here, and I'm going to try and make sure he's still around the pillar so that people can still line of sight. Actually, as a... Yep, there's that area denial, the thing that's hitting Bragwin right now. So I want to hold him near the pillar so that people can get behind the pillar relatively quickly. He hits substantially harder in his second phase. And he starts to do that debuff. That debuff is a dot. And there's that Dreadful Roar again. Dreadful Roar also increases the damage you take, and it stacks. So that's something I just get to live with, but, you know, other people can move around the corner on. So we've got a Soft Enrage, we've got dots, he hits harder, and we've got the Area Denial. So his phase 2 is a little bit more meaty. Oh, let me get back in the healing rain there. Sorry about that, Mr. Red. I imagine you will notice the biggest difference in Pandaria, because that's when they upped the, I forget what it's called, which enabled them to have higher resolution textures. Like, literally higher resolution. Gonna scooch around the corner just a sec. And we're good. And you know what? That was actually an interesting boss fight. So the 3-man concept does seem to be working. What'd you two think? Because I'm just the tank. How did that feel from your guys' perspective? Arrgh. Ah. And yeah, you're right, Blake Jamal. I should probably save the existing positives and negatives that I've already given just in case. It's possible this might get thrown out the window. Like, they might pull a BRD. I don't know. To explain that briefly, BRD is a dungeon in the game. It's a long dungeon. It was our very first mega dungeon, and it has a whole bunch of mechanics and stuff, and it's honestly, it kind of sucks. It's not a great dungeon. However, with the anniversary event right now, there's a BRD that is a raid. And while a lot of the bosses are the same names, it is functionally a brand new raid built over the bones. It's a remix. It's a remake, actually. Excuse me, let me use my own terminology. A remake of the BRD. And so it might be that all those old notes are just completely invalidated. Because they might do that. Like, that is something that might happen. I don't know. I don't know what the hell they're doing. Okay. Yeah, no, those bosses can be mean. It's great. High five. Old BRD does still exist. It's just not content anymore. No, you're right. You're right. Sorry. That is actually valid. You're right. Sorry. What I mean by that is if we did old BRD, we'd just face roll it, so no positives or negatives. And new BRD would be, you know, the thing that's there. Because you're right. They did keep old BRD. They didn't delete it. Unlike, say, Ragefire Chasm, where you literally cannot do old Ragefire Chasm, or old Dead Mines, or old Shadowfang, or old Sholomets, or old Stratholme, or whatever. That was what I was assuming, because in most previous cases, they have just simply erased the previous version of the dungeon and or raid. However, you are right, and they have been getting a little bit better about the concept of not erasing old content, because it is a recent trend, like last year recent trend, that they've started recognizing that their old content actually exists. Yeah, no, I think we're committed on that. So going forward, if people are amenable, we'll go ahead and 3-man this stuff. I know, Huthor. I was just thinking that because it's just, I don't know. I don't know anything anymore. All right, what the hell were we actually doing today? Because now we're gonna go do quests. Those are unchanged at least. At least we could just go do the overworld stuff. Right. We were doing the zone we're in right now, actually. So let me go ahead and do this. No, we have not done Wrathgate yet. Thank you for joining me, by the way. Yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to give negatives to raids for not existing at all. And we're going to give negatives to dungeons for the fact that we have to jury-rig a solution. Now, Huthor's probably going to fall over in shock here, but I actually agree with him on one thing. I think we should standardize the dungeon negative, because it's a little bit of a different thing than the raids. Because the raids cannot be experienced properly, but the dungeons can, right? And that's just different. Those are different vibes. So I think we need to come up with a standardized amount of dungeon negatives to give each expansion, and then just do that going forwards. Where am I going? I'm going to the Howling Fjord. So here. I haven't deleted them yet, Ross, but I will. So we're going to give a variable amount of negatives to old raids. We're going to give a standardized amount of negatives to old dungeons. We're going to try and experience old dungeons with 3 people up to Dragonflight. They're in the chasm, you can still see them. And then we're going to try to 3-man dungeons, so we can actually experience them like we just did. BFA music, don't worry about it. Oh, Nick. That's true, actually, Huthor. We can still review things like terrain design effectively, or run back problems, or like... Because, like, Molten Core is not just this big, long thing of awful. Once you get to the end, you have to then run all the way back through the entire friggin' raid to get to Ragnaros. So that is actually still a valid negative now. But I would have to rip out all the negatives to the bosses, because none of those bosses exist anymore in any functional content. So... We do literally have a power scaling category, usually for positives. But this feels unique. I almost feel like adding an abandonment category for this. I don't know. In fact, I'm committed to it. Let's go ahead and add a whole new category of negative called Abandonment. And just have that, right? And just have that as a thing for MMOs. And just use that, because it'll also make it much, much easier to search later, assuming they ever go back and fix any of this. Because that is an asterisk. We don't know. Yeah, Blizzard... I was talking about this on Discord. Blizzard redid their scaling system recently. I think it was this patch. And it's, bad? Like, it was fine. It's actually really frustrating to me because their scaling system worked really well. And, like, I've praised it for years. And yeah, and then the anniversary patch came out, and then all of a sudden, ugh! And it's, I honestly wonder if we would be face-rolling things if not for the current patch. I don't actually know. Because I hadn't actually been doing a lot of time walking before. But it does make me wonder. And will they fix it? Who knows? Sometimes bugs get fixed. Sometimes bugs are Vashir. We don't know. Yeah, that sounds right, Maverick, because I was wondering why it was being wonky about that. But yeah, the bugginess is something that I really do hope they fix, regardless of all other aspects, because the bugginess has definitely led to issues, and holy crap. Just revert to the previous system. Can you do that? Can you not do that? I don't know. I don't know what's going on under the hood at this point. Okay. What was that guy's name? It's funny you say that, Blade Duval. Because at some point or another, WoW is going to finally start getting positives for quest design and you know, meat content. We're just not there yet. Oh yeah, that's another little asterisk I gotta add, because you remember how I mentioned the scaling's kind of wrong? Well, let me show you something really quick. Let me write down the guy's name. Ingvar, that's his name, Ingvar. I think Ingvar's a good fight. I think we had a good boss with that. The first two are basic, like he's just shadow to, you know, pay attention to the Frost Tomb, and he's just, you know, deal with it. But I liked Ingvar. I think Ingvar was actually a good fight, plus the Ingvar. And we can do that, because we did it with 3 people. But hang on. I want to show off something real quick. Because part of the reason I freaked out last night is because I have been leaning pretty hard on follower dungeons being a possible way of solving a lot of these problems. So I decided to go do a follower dungeon. I'm going to emulate that interaction for you. Okay, I'm going to get on my Warlock. There they are. Level 10. You already know where this is going, because I'm level 10. If you've been paying any attention, you already know what's about to happen. Now, I'm going to do a specific dungeon because I've been using it for tech tests. Follower dungeon, and we're going to do Oldemon. Boom. Okay, so let's experience a follower dungeon at level 10. Yeah, now, this probably gets across just how out of my mind I was last night. In my defense, it was like 2 in the morning. But, like, I was kind of in the middle of a miniature panic attack, right? And so I'm like, oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god. And I was like, you know what? It's okay. I've got one thing that will calm me, will soothe my soul. All I have to do is go prove that follower dungeons are still good and everything's going to be fine. And then, well, you're kind of already seeing what's happening here, because I'm just running through this with reckless abandon and not even trying anything. But it gets really bad when we get to the boss. I'm just going to go and start moving forward to. So I happen to know this boss, and I happen to know its mechanics, because of course I friggin' do. They have a whole second phase thing. It's cool. You notice I don't even have a tank or a healer. Okay, the healer finally noticed I exist. Alright, let's go. Come on, let's go, let's go. Alright, first boss, right? So let's review this boss as is. Okay, so I'm going to put a dot on this guy. I'm going to put a dot on this guy. I'm going to put a dot on this guy. I'm going to hit them both, all three with a meteor. Okay, yep,
Charging.
yep. Okay, so there's our first AoE stun attack. That's very difficult to avoid. They've hit phase 2. Yep, phase 2 has begun, and they're dead. And so I saw this. And again, pretty much immediately flipped. Because I was just like, what? And again, I wasn't really thinking in my right of head, because it hadn't quite processed for me that I was level 10 and that was the problem. I came back in here and did it on a 60 and actually had to engage with the fight, and they got all the way, they did actually a full rotation in the boat phase. So, hey, actual fight, woo. But yeah, anyways, moving on. Anyways, you can do follower dungeons at level 10. Did you know that? I'm not time walking, by the way. I'm just a level 10. Yeah, I get why they do the level 10 scaling thing. What I don't agree with is the fact that they do the level 10 scaling thing. Like, I even talked about that. You know, this is going to sound strange, Huthor, but why do they care about how fast people level in this game? Like, you can already level so ridiculously fast. Yeah, we're not time walking. I thought so. That you could just blaze through content and hit a max level in about a day. So why do they care? Like, it feels like a weird thing to put any time and attention into, you know? It's like, oh no, we got to stop people from leveling quicker. But you level so fast in this game. Like, holy crap. We have done 2 zones on our druid. He's 46 out of 80. And that's just, there's no intention to level there. That's just idly going through content for the purposes of enjoying said content. Anyways. So, moving on. God, I need to, like, mentally reset now. You know, I could actually see that, Uller. Which is just its own problem. No, J. Palmer. People only called it Kung Fu Panda because they were going for the lowest common denominator with regards to insulting it. Everyone was going to insult Pandaria if they were going to insult Pandaria, right? Congrats, hero. Surface level morons who only see a bunch of pandas and think, oh, WoW's gotten silly and stupid. Who are just really, really, really dumb. Like, that's just the dumbest possible insult that any of them could ever level. I do wonder how many people, if any, are working on older content, because you gotta figure at least some are, because every now and again they do patch older stuff, and every now and again they do actually go back and fix up a few things and add new mechanics and blah blah blah. But I wonder how much time and effort and budget that team has. Or if it's just people doing it stuff on the side in their spare time. I have no idea. I have no idea. Is that better, Yura? That's true. Kung Fu Panda actually ripped off Warcraft 3. I'm just saying. Well, yeah, that's what I was thinking, Huther, because the side team, the what I mentally think of as the live team, even though that's actually misleading. We know they exist. We know they're doing stuff. We even know people who work on that team. But yeah, they do stuff like Pandaria Remix or the Plunderstorm events. That's their job. Interesting, Dakota. That's good to know. Yeah, it's not a good insult on any level. It was always a dumb insult. They call it that? That's funny. So now we're listening to doomy music instead. Just for you, Yara. Everything is doomed. No, I actually didn't, Bladeful. I've never gotten back around to that. The undead tea. Alright, here's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna go lay down. Because this has been an interesting night. Yeah. You can make fun of me for it if you want, but this hit me harder than it probably should have. When I get back up, we'll go ahead and do the Howling Fjord. So I'll see y'all for the second shift.